Achieving subtle communication with the indwelling thought attuner. Is learning the art of achieving subtle and sublime communication in relation to language you use with yourself and with the indwelling thought attuner, illuminating a level of self-consciousness, self-control, and self-mastery leading to complete unification of body, mind, spirit, and soul? Do not be concerned if you don't understand the above question, let alone know if the answer is yes or no at this time in your experience. Hopefully, before the end of reading this article, you will better understand and be able to answer this question for yourself. Pilate asked Jesus, "What is truth?" And Jesus never gave an answer. Have you ever asked yourself why he never answered him? Remember the principles from the previous articles. 1. What you normally perceive as reality is likely illusion, and the inverse of what you perceive and believe to be true, the inverse is the actual reality. 2. The argumentative defense of any proposition is inversely proportional to the truth contained. Firstly, when you experience the truth of knowing, the knowing of the experienced truth never has to be argued. Let's consider a very simple example using a very simple principle. 3. Anger is like a stone hurled into a hornet's nest. Until you experience the effect that getting mad as a hornet's nest can have upon your own mind, as well as the mind personality consciousness of another or others who are the unlucky recipients of your anger. Anger is like a stone thrown into a hornet's nest is only an intellectual concept and nothing more. Even if you observe another person getting angry at himself or at others, it is not the same as experiencing the truth of this principle firsthand. But the moment you experience getting angry firsthand, if you have any common sense and learn from your experience, you will work at mastering control over this tendency in yourself. You will have experienced the truth in another principle which says, 4. You cannot know truth until you feelingly experience it, and many truths are not really known except in adversity. Once you know the truth, having experienced truth firsthand, there is no need ever to argue the truth, is there? You know whereof you speak. And therein lies the vast difference between the purely conceptual and the experiential, between an intellectual concept of mind, the knowing and feeling experience of what is true and real, between the thought which may or may not have value, and the experience which is value. And when our experiences are attached to moral values, these moral values are the bridge to the spiritual, and the raw material which the indwelling thought attuner uses to weave the evolvingly higher ascension patterns, the Urantia energy patterns of the soul form we are becoming moment by moment and day by day. And if you are still with me, if I haven't lost you in what I am sharing with you, then you will now understand fully why Jesus never gave Pilate an answer to this question, what is truth? Pilate did not even have an intellectual concept of truth, let alone an experiential one. Overcoming negative habit reaction patterns. Wisdom dictates that no matter how much you don't feel like making the effort to overcome a negative habit reaction pattern, you do it anyway. If, on the other hand, you were to approach the overcoming of negative habit reaction patterns with the same desperate and urgent focus it would take to save yourself or someone else from drowning, exerting a supreme focus of mind to change a negative habit reaction pattern, you might approach it in the following way. 5, life is a day's work. Do it well, the act is ours, the consequence is God's. And you well know, if you've ever tried to quit smoking, for example, what a monumental and laser-focused effort it takes to change your thinking, changing your behavior, and replacing the negative habit reaction pattern with a superior one. In this case, a healthier lifestyle, by focusing upon taking in quality water, quality juices, quality foods, and quality herbs. During the dark night of the soul period of my life in my late 20s, I was on a path of self-loathing, self-pity, and self-destruction, drinking alcohol, ingesting drugs, and smoking up to 6 packs of cigarettes a day. It took approximately 3 years to change my thoughts, change my behavior, and quit drinking alcohol and taking drugs. That left the most deeply rooted addiction of all, smoking. When I inhaled my last cigarette one day in May 1982, I immediately went on a 7-day water and organic juice fast. This was recommended to rid the body of all traces of nicotine. Beyond this fast, I began to slowly but surely in little steps improve upon my daily diet. Making these improvements, however, did not rid me of the psychological addiction to smoking cigarettes. I was still tempted to smoke, especially when a guest came over to our home who smoked. I couldn't be in the same room with the individual while he or she was smoking. It was when a cigarette mostly unsmoked was lying in the ashtray and no one was around, I felt the greatest temptation to pick up the cigarette and smoke it. I intuitively knew, however, that all it would take is one drag from the cigarette and I would be addicted again. This created within me one of the greatest conflicts and challenges I had ever faced up to that moment in time. Looking back, it is a fact of experiencing the truth which arose out of my struggles to overcome all of my addictions and the which poisoned my body and mind, the realization I never could have done this alone. It was my simultaneously seeking a deeper communication on more subtle levels than I had ever previously committed to, asking for direct support and assistance from the Indwelling Thought Attuner and Divine Partner, which ultimately allowed me to rise above these addictive tendencies of the animal origin being. I have not yet overcome all negative habit reaction patterns of my human existence and experience. There is subtle and sublime level upon subtle and sublime level, both to explore and experience. And if I am learning anything from the continuous exploration of subtle and sublime levels of communication with the Paradise Father's spirit within me, it is this. To say that mind emerged from matter explains nothing. If the universe were merely a mechanism and mind were unapart from matter, we would never have two differing interpretations of any observed phenomenon. The concepts of truth, beauty, and goodness are not inherent in either physics or chemistry. A machine cannot know, much less know truth, hunger for righteousness, and cherish goodness. Science may be physical, but the mind of the truth-discerning scientist is at once supermaterial. Matter knows not truth, neither can it love mercy, nor delight in spiritual realities. Moral convictions based on spiritual enlightenment and rooted in human experience are just as real and certain as mathematical deductions based on physical observations, but on another and higher level. If men were only machines, they would react more or less uniformly to a material universe. Individuality, much less personality, would be non-existent. The inconsistency of the modern mechanist is this. If this were merely a material universe and man only a machine, such a man would be wholly unable to recognize himself as such a machine. And likewise would such a machine, man, be wholly unconscious of the fact of the existence of such a material universe. The materialistic dismay and despair of a mechanistic science has failed to recognize the fact of the spirit-indwelt mind of the scientist, whose very supermaterial insight formulates these mistaken and self-contradictory concepts of a materialistic universe. Mortal man is indeed a machine, a living mechanism. His roots are truly in the physical world of energy. Many human reactions are mechanical in nature. Much of life is machine-like. But man, a mechanism, is more than a machine. He is mind-endowed and spirit-indwelt. And though he can never, throughout his material life, escape the chemical and electrical mechanics of his existence, he can increasingly learn how to subordinate this physical life machine to the directive wisdom of experience by the process of consecrating the human mind to the execution of the spiritual urges of the indwelling God fragment, the thought Attuner. I told you that by the time we reach the end of this article, you would better understand one thing: whether you could answer the question with a yes or no, the question with which I began this article. So let's state the question again. Is learning the art of achieving subtle and sublime communication in relation to the language you use with yourself and with the indwelling thought attuner, illuminating a level of self-consciousness, self-control, and self-mastery, leading to complete unification of body, mind, spirit, and soul? An individual can hardly begin to answer this question without knowing what are some of these subtle and sublime levels of communication with the indwelling thought attuner. To end this article, I'm going to but mention them. In the next article, we will begin to explore each of these in far greater detail. Some of these subtle and sublime levels are moving away from using the term God to referring to God as Father, my Father, the Universal Father, and my Paradise Father. Moving toward the realization of the presence of the indwelling thought attuner is the most real thing in all of human experience. The Paradise Father is both the farthest removed and the closest to us, a true mystery in the universe of universes. Communicating with the Paradise Father and his indwelling divine partner in the journey of exploration to become spirit beings. Communicating as you would with any other individual. Acknowledging daily that you are living in the presence of the indwelling presence of the Paradise Father. Stop knowingly poisoning your body and mind, exerting the supreme effort to overcome all animal inertia, replacing inferior habit reaction patterns with superior, more healthy ones. There are many, many more subtle and sublime levels of communication with the indwelling thought attuner than the ones I have mentioned. If you choose to embrace the ones I have mentioned, you will experience a major shift in consciousness, moving into the mid-mind, the superconscious level of knowing there is no separation between the conscious I am and the soul.